Look what I have here. Here is probably the most common 357 Magnum revolver and probably the most common configuration you're going to find it. Nice Smith & Wesson 686 chambered in 357 Magnum. I'll show that's unloaded. And I'm not going to be pulling the trigger or messing with any of the action today in this video, so just thought I'd mention that. Now, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to explain why the 357 Magnum is the greatest handgun cartridge ever created. Now, I know what you're thinking. Didn't you already have a video where you said the 38 Special was the best? Yes, I did. And I still think the 38 Special, right here, is the best. But that doesn't mean that I can't think the 357 Magnum is the greatest. And I will give you my reasons why the 357 Magnum is the greatest handgun cartridge ever created. But before that, I'll give a quick brief little history on the 357 Magnum. Now, as most people know, the 38 Special was first. It came out about the turn of the 20th century. And if you notice, it's a little bit shorter than the 357 Magnum, just by a little bit. And what you had there with the 38 Special, so you had a pretty decent round. But around gangster era time, the 1920s and 30s, police departments were having a little bit of trouble getting that 38 Special to do much good for going through the car doors and body armor of the bad guy. They were outgunned, and this 38 Special with a 158 grain bullet doing 800 feet per second just wasn't doing it. So, with a little bit of development, police forces came out with the 38-44. Essentially all that was, you got the name 44 because they were taking, like a 44 caliber revolver that's the big old Smith & Wesson end frame, the 44 special caliber. They're taking this 44 frame that's bigger than most 38 caliber frames, and they were just putting the 38 caliber barrel on it and 38 caliber cylinder on a 44 sized frame. So what that enabled them to do was essentially make a plus P or plus P plus, as we think of it today, in the 38 Special. So they had a cartridge that was almost up there as much as the 357, but not quite. They had they went from 800 to maybe 1100 feet per second. So comparable today to maybe a 9mm plus P. It was still pretty powerful, but it wasn't quite what the 357 was. Okay, around that time you had Elmer Keith. He also put his hand in this thing here. He was a very well-known outdoorsman and hand loader and dabbler in making new cartridges. Now, he made the 44 Magnum later on, as well as the 357 by doing essentially the same thing with the 44 Special. But what he did was he was loading up these 38 caliber bullets up to the 38-44 and beyond. So what he ended up doing was he was getting these 38 caliber bullets up to the levels of 357 Magnum, but because you can't obviously put out a round and say, oh, this is my Elmer Keith Special or something like that. You can't do that because the only guns you could fire it through would be the 38-44, and there would be a great risk of people getting their hands on these Elmer Keith rounds and just blowing up their standard 38 Special revolvers. So what he did is he worked with Smith & Wesson, and I think he worked with Remington too, didn't he? It's called the 357 Remington Magnum, ain't it? I think so. Anyways, he made the 357 Magnum. All he really did was make the case a little bit longer, simply to prevent that longer round from being chambered in a 38 Special revolver. And that works very simply. You have, let's say this is a 38 caliber revolver. If you were going to try to put a 357 Magnum in that, it would go in and it would go about to that point and it would stop, be sticking out, and you wouldn't be able to close the thing. And that's simply because at the front of these chambers, the point where it tapers in is shorter back on a 38 versus a 357. So the outside of the brass on these cartridges is 38 caliber. The inside is .357. So, this, let's say that this was a 38 caliber revolver, right where the bullet starts to, right where the case mouth stops right there, it'll taper in inside the chamber to .357. So if you try to take something that was longer, that's 38 caliber, you know, it's going to stop. It's going to get hung up on the case mouth. It won't go in all the way. So that's where Elmer Keith came in, and he helped develop the 357 Magnum. So now after I get past some of that history, why is the 357 Magnum the greatest handgun cartridge ever created? I'm going to be real blunt and simple about this. It really comes down to how much power you're getting for how much bullet is there. Think about this. This is a 125 grain bullet, but they do go down to 110 grain. And you go up, you know, generally you got the 110s and the 125s and the 130s and 140s and 158s, 180s, but a lot of people will shoot the 125 grain. Now you compare that to something else that has close to the same power as a 357, or even maybe a little bit more. You got your 10 millimeters, your 40 calibers, your 45 autos, your 44 Magnums, or 44 Special Plus P, your 45 Colts. A lot of these cartridges are in the same power level as this. What do you get with that though? You get a projectile that's very heavy. And in the end, if you have a heavier projectile, let's compare a 45 Colt, for example. This is a 125 grain bullet. A lot of the 45 Colts, or as some people call it, long Colt, will have a 250 grain bullet. It'll have twice the amount of projectile there. And in the end, that's twice the material. And if you have twice the material, it doesn't take a mathematician to figure out how much more that will cost in the end. So with this, you have something that is extraordinarily powerful with a little tiny bullet in it, basically. Not tiny, but small in comparison. So in the end, the cost is going to be a lot less, especially for a hand loader. As a hand loader, think about if you had to buy 500 bullets that are 125 grain versus 500 bullets that are 250 grain. Big difference there. And even when you're talking 200 grain bullets or 180 grain bullets with some of these other large, powerful handguns, such as a 10 millimeter, your cost will still catch up with you. Even in ammunition. The ammunition for 357 nowadays isn't that bad. My last box I bought was like 20 bucks. But it, you know, if you were hand load the 357 Magnum, it costs really no more to hand load than the 9mm. You're talking pennies a box more because you got a little bit more gunpowder, but that's about it. Pennies more. So you compare that there to a lot of cartridges. And one of the biggest selling points to anybody buying a 357 Magnum revolver is always the ability to put that 38 caliber bullet in this revolver. You can put that 38 Special and you can fire it through a 357 Magnum. It's very cost effective to do that. And this still is the best handgun cartridge ever created, in my opinion, because anybody can use it and anybody can use it well. The 357 is the greatest. That is a powerhouse. It is a powerhouse for what you're getting out of that. You're getting a lot of power. You're getting 500, 600, 700 foot-pounds of muzzle energy out of that. Now I watched a video a couple days ago Paul Harrell put out. I'm a big fan of his, and he was saying, well, a lot of people say a 9mm is just as good as the 357. And some even saying it's just as powerful, and he was basically showing that is not true. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you got a 9mm at most, you're going to put 350 foot-pounds of energy on that bullet. And you take a very warm 357 Magnum that you're putting twice the energy on it. It doesn't take rocket scientists to realize that you're going to have a lot more knockdown power. You're hitting with a lot more force, and that force is not only going to transfer a lot more kinetic energy and really mess up the bad guy, but it's going to mess up that bullet. It's going to expand it more, even with a poor hollow point design. The 357 Magnum is just going to expand. That's just how it is. You know, with lesser caliber bullets like the 38 and the 9mm, stuff like that, you have to have a good hollow point design. 357 Magnum, you could have this semi-jacketed, just a big hollow cup in it. It's going to open up. It doesn't matter. It's not going to clog. It's going to open up. Big. So it has a lot of knockdown power. A whole lot of knockdown power. You know, 95 to 96% with a lot of the cartridges just like this one. Not only that, but this is a great survivalist gun. I mean, you could easily take a deer with it or a hog. Not only that, but you put a 357 Magnum like this that might have 600 or 650 foot-pounds of energy. You take it and you put it in a rifle, which you do have a lot of chamberings of that. You got bolt action, lever action, and some other kinds too. And out of an 18-inch barrel, you're going to get 1,000 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. Pretty much touching the base of some 223s and 5.56, and some would argue that you'd even get more knockdown power on a game animal as well. Because a larger bullet, a larger hole is going to have more knockdown on a game animal than a smaller bullet. I've seen it myself. I've shot deer with 444, 12 gauge, and a little 270 Weatherby Magnum, 90 grain bullet. Wasn't much difference. But I can say with the 444, man, I made a poor shot, but it dropped it. Anyways, 357 Magnum is the greatest handgun cartridge ever created. And you're probably going to say, well, you're pretty biased towards revolvers. And you are correct. I love revolvers. They are just more reliable than autos, and that's all there is. And you can argue that day and night, but general consensus and the street cred on that, you're not going to win if you say the auto is just as reliable. Now, I say many semi-automatic pistols are very reliable, 99.9% reliable. But you compare 99.9% to 99.99. You never know on that 1/1000th of a chance that you might have an issue might happen. It might happen when you need the gun the most. And 1 out of 10,000 chance you're going to have a problem with this, or 1 out of 1,000 chance with the auto. I know I just made those numbers up, but there's a little bit of truth there. It's just a little bit more reliable. That's just how it is. So if you compare the bullet weight, how powerful it is, and the fact that you can always fire that 38 special in that gun, I mean, you just cannot argue that it's not the greatest handgun cartridge ever created. It really is the greatest, because there are so many purposes for it. So many purposes for it, from just target practice to self-defense to hunting and beyond. And another thing about the 357 Magnum is, yeah, you could come out and say, okay, my 10mm has just as much power. Actually, it has more power. Okay. Let's take, for instance, a 10mm, it's a 180 grain bullet. It's packing about the same amount of energy, because a lot of these 10mm are actually lower powered than the 10mm is meant to be. A lot of them actually have less power than the modern 357 Magnum. Take a 180 grain bullet. Let's see, you need to punch through a barrier. A 180 grain bullet with the same amount of energy as this 125 grain bullet. What one's going to punch through with the same amount of energy easier? A 35 caliber bullet or a 40 caliber bullet? Which one's skinnier? Which one has less material to try to dig through with the same amount of energy? I think the 357 is going to penetrate a little bit better, and most of the time when you watch tests on stuff like that, it really does. It may not penetrate through more flesh, but you need to punch a hole through a little piece of metal or something, such as a car door or a different barrier. This performs very well in comparison to larger bullets. So this is just some of my arguments why the 357 Magnum is the greatest handgun cartridge ever created, and just a little bit of history on it. So I encourage you to get on here and disagree with me or agree with me. It doesn't matter, because I like a good debate on cartridges and calibers, and that's my first love. I love cartridges, study ballistics more than anything else. So I love to hear anybody's argument they have on better cartridges or similar cartridges or anything I might have missed. So anyways, that's just my opinion. I want to share it. So thanks for watching.